Good afternoon. You have just tuned in to Just the Facts. I want to thank you for joining us today, and I would like to introduce my guest, Alan Duff, who has come to talk to us from Isanti County. He is a former Army veteran, a major in the Army of 23 years. He has been on the City Council and also as a commissioner in Isanti County. And he's recently written a book in 2016 about fixing America's shattered politics. Nice to have you here with us, Alan. We're going to start out about just a little bit about your background and why you wrote the book, and then we'll talk a little bit about your book. So,
sure. Thank you for having me up here, Marcia. It's great to be here in Duluth, and it was a joy to write this book. But a little bit about my background. I went to Burnsville High School back in the early 80s and served in the military and joined in 1982, where I started as a private and was promoted 8 times over the next 23 years, retiring in 2005 as a major. And then I got involved with local politics. In the meantime, I'd also been going to college and got a degree in political science and a master's degree in urban regional planning. And then I got involved with politics after 23 years in the military. And what I found was absolutely disgusting, the principles that were involved in local politics as compared to what I had experienced in the military. Just a day and night difference of genuine public service for the people that we were serving, or the principles behind an organization, such as what I learned in the military, compared to what I saw in the political arena, where too many politicians just cared about themselves and not the people they were elected to represent.
I think we see that around here. It's statewide, it's nationwide, and it's sad. But you are giving us some hope because you've written this book, Fixing America's Shattered Politics. So why don't we talk a little bit about, I've read a few of the chapters in the book, and one thing that stood out to me very profoundly was in one chapter, one of the commissioners that you were serving with was stealing from the public, and you brought this to the attention of the board. The person is still serving in that position, and you said at the end of that paragraph, if a person is not capable of handling their own personal finances, what are they doing dealing with public monies? And it jumped off the page, and I thought, that's exactly true.
Well, the first 9 chapters of the book, we talk about a lot of the problems. A lack of public fiscal responsibility is certainly one of them. We talk about a lack of transparency in the backroom deals. I believe backroom deals are one of the biggest threats hurting our government in the genuine public service to the people, because those backroom deals are benefiting the politicians and they're hurting we the people that they are elected to serve. So I appreciate your comments about trying to bring hope to a difficult situation. Let's face it, our politics is a mess. Virtually nobody disagrees with that. And one of the things I like to talk about is that the average person has 15 to 20 different levels of government that they're paying taxes towards. So the odds are pretty good that someone's going to find some level of government that they're not happy with the service. And as I dealt with these politicians in the back rooms, I was just absolutely dismayed at the lack of genuine concern for the people that they were elected to serve. But we do talk the last 10 chapters of the book about what can the concerned citizens do. The subtitle of the book is called Fixing America's Shattered Politics. But the subtitle is Practical Steps Concerned Citizens Can Take to Regain Our Lost Government. Because that's really what it's about. It's about the people making sure their politicians are accountable for their actions, and that they're delivering what they're saying they're delivering, and that they're not doing things that benefit themselves at the cost of we the people.
Well, it's interesting that they make all these promises before they get elected, and they swear to uphold the Constitution, and yet, as I have seen in my own public service position, and as I've worked in the political arena all these many years, saying one thing and doing another is just very common. It's not unusual whatsoever. Now, you brought a element of integrity into your position, both as a city councilor, and I see that you had, in your book, you had recommendations by probably a couple of your former city council members to go ahead and run for this position in Isanti. But when you got into it, did you have any idea, or could you even imagine the scope of poor government responsibility to the people? I mean, in here you state that they did not take public comment in Isanti. In other words, the people didn't have a voice. Well, you'd have to talk about it, and maybe we'll put that on agenda for next year. In other words, I don't like to use the word to be damned, but that's what the public has been. That's what's happened to the public. We don't care what you want. We want your vote, we want your money, but we don't care after that what you have to say. And you brought that out in your book.
Well, honor and integrity were two words that meant everything to me in my military service. It was about doing what was good for the organization that you represented. And I thought, perhaps somewhat naively, when I retired from the military in 2005 and I got involved with politics, that politics was about serving the public good. That's what it seems like it should be, and I wished it was, but it really wasn't. It was about the politicians doing what was best for themselves and for their own careers. So the principles of honor and integrity were really, in a lot of ways, just thrown out the window, and it was all about what can we do to better ourselves. And it actually, a lot of our votes that were made were done based on personality differences rather than good principles about what was best for the county. I even had several of the commissioners admit to me when the lights weren't on that they wouldn't support initiatives that I was making because they didn't like me. And that's fine if you don't like me, but in the military, we couldn't get away with those nonsense type of ideas. I had commanders that I would not get along with, but I had to, because of the mission, support them. I had to work for them, and I had to do it with honor and integrity in everything I did. In politics, like you mentioned at the beginning here, we had one of our commissioners stealing from the county. And in the military, that was real simple. When somebody stole in the military, we gave them an Article 15 and we kicked them out of the military. In politics, it's not so easy. It's about who has more friends and who's going to get the votes on their side if we have any actions for this. Ironically, I actually ended up getting censored by the county board for revealing this to the commissioners. So it's really about who has friends and who doesn't. And what hurts in all of this is we, the people, continue to pay astronomical amount of dollars for programs that are very inefficient or very ineffective because the politicians are making a lot of money. We have a chapter in the book about the differences in pay. I compare my responsibilities and obligations as a military major with that of a county commissioner in Isanti County. And I got paid about 4 or 5 times as much to be a county commissioner as I did to be a military major, which to me is just asinine that our country has gone that far where we're paying politicians that much. And that was just the base pay. We had some that were milking the county for a lot more money than that. And let's just say there's a lot of money in politics that goes around, comes around. We have politicians donating money to their favorite charities and then getting involved with those boards. It's a mess. Our political arena is really a mess right now.
It brought to mind that, okay, we have a constitution in the state of Minnesota. We have a constitution in the United States of America. However, I know it's not being followed because I follow the state politics. Do you have something like that? I also ran for county board at one time. Do they have anything like that in the county of the guidelines that they're supposed to follow, that they're abridging all the time, or what?
Absolutely, but...
So they have policies set.
Well, we swore, when we swore in as county commissioner, we took an oath to our Constitution.
Yes.
When I joined the military, I rose my right hand and swore to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America. And I did that with great joy and pride, and we did our best to honor that code at all times. When I was elected to city council and then to county board, we also had that same oath. We were basically committed to honoring the Constitution. But in my opinion, that was not really practiced. It was saying one thing but actually doing another thing that was not honoring what the Constitution's about and what the job was of the political office.
So, okay, the Constitution, swear to the oath to the Constitution. But now let's go back a minute. Does the Isanti County have a policy book of what they are supposed to or not supposed to do? We certainly do in soil and water. We didn't have to in in the township government because we were accountable to the people. Once a year they came and sat through a meeting and told us how we were going to spend, how we were going to allocate the budget, to tell us, no, you're going to move some out of this and you're going to put it over there. but we were accountable directly to the people in the township. The closest government to the people is township government. So, but we didn't really have a policy book, but there's integrity on the board. And that was a very interesting situation when I first got on there. That was a little hair-raising, to say the least, because we had to get rid of some people that really didn't have any integrity. But we did get rid of them. And so if there's no policies that the county has to follow, sure, you can swear to the Constitution. How does that apply directly to the county?
I never saw a code of ethics in Isanti County. I do see it in quite a few local communities throughout the state of Minnesota. And when I see that, I generally have a little bit more of a warm fuzzy that they're doing their best to try to do the public business with some code of honor and integrity. In the city of Isanti, we were spoken to once a year, a thorough discussion by our attorney on what the open meeting law was about. And so we followed the open meeting law quite closely in the city of Isanti. It's a great law. It's a law that I wish all the communities across our state were following. In Isanti County, we never were given that legal guidance. And so I think there was just a lot of misunderstanding about what it meant to do transparent work. I got off to a rough start in politics when I was very disappointed. One of our citizens from the county made a scathing letter to the editor saying I was being disrespectful and not the Isanti County tone in how I presented some arguments against a particular issue. And so I called up this gentleman and asked him where in the audience he was sitting that he would come up with that conclusion. And he admitted he wasn't even in the audience.
Now, was this a letter to the editor, or was it
Yes.
the editor of the paper himself?
It was a letter to the editor by a citizen who I found out later was a campaign manager of one of the other commissioners.
Okay.
So it was low ball, cheap politics.
Right.
But anyway, I wrote a response letter to the editor telling the constituents of Isanti County the truth of what had happened, and that going forward, I would record public meetings so that the public could hear and determine for themselves whether I was being out of line or not. And that did not make me any friends on the county board. One of the commissioners actually asked our attorney if that was legal for me to, quote unquote, record a public meeting, which I found just disgusting. Also, another item in Isanti County that I found just absolutely disgusting, as a person who was willing to give his life for this country in our 23 years of military service, Isanti County did not allow public input. When people started listening to our meetings, they said, I want to go and speak out against this nonsense happening here. And our county chair at the time said, sorry, we don't allow public input at these board meetings. And I said, that's unacceptable. We are here to serve them. And their comment was, well, Commissioner Duff, if you really think that's important for the public to hear what we have going on, you're going to have to bring that up at our goal-setting session next year and we'll talk about it. Unacceptable. We're there to listen to the people and to try to do our best to represent the public good for we the people. But we have lost that. We have politicians who are basically above the law and are basically there to serve themselves and to serve their other fellow commissioners that they may get along with better at the dismay of the people that they're elected to serve.
Serving the public, really? This does not sound like Isanti, and probably other counties as well, are serving the public, for sure. Now, do they hold this in a public meeting place, these Isanti County Commissioners?
Yes, they held them at 9 a.m. on a Wednesday when most people couldn't make it to the meetings. And interesting, we had another county, I think it was Freeborn County in southern Minnesota, where one of their commissioners kind of had the same experience as me. He started recording the meetings, and one of their commissioners took his recorder and slammed it in the middle of a meeting. This was several years ago, but a lot of these politicians literally think they're above the law. They think they're above transparency in representing their actions. And I believe we, the people, need to ask our politicians to be accountable for their actions and to serve the public good. We can have the argument over what that means, what's good and what's a public good and what's not. But the nonsense of doing things illegally, immorally, unethically, behind closed doors, the question I always ask these politicians that are doing this is, we're a public body. We are supposed to represent the public good. What are we doing with making all these backroom deals? And basically it goes down to understanding the open meeting law. Because in an open meeting law, all business decisions of the county, of the city, of the state of Minnesota are supposed to be done in public. with some exceptions for human resources issues and sensitive issues like that. But it wasn't followed, and that really, the backroom politics, the politicians making deals with each other to help each other to get brownie points and to get up the political totem pole is what's going on. And I'm not going to sit here and watch anymore. I'm going to speak out against it because our future is at stake. If these politicians don't start to learn to spend money respectfully and serve the people with honor and integrity, our country is going to go down. A $20 trillion debt is a mess that we're in right now as a nation. And it starts with our local government, it goes on at our state government, and it goes on in our federal government. The mess is very deep, and it's very, very wide.
And part of the problem is you, the tax-paying citizens. How many meetings have you been to in the last month, 2 months, 3 months? I thought the answer today at the meeting was a little bit pathetic, considering all these people are so involved in getting information and whatnot. But let me ask the public, how many times have you been to a city council meeting, a school board meeting, or a county commissioners meeting, or gone downstate and watched the procedures? If you can answer 0, then do you think maybe you're part of the problem? Do you think maybe the secrecy that's going on is you, because you are not there to pay attention to what's happening? I got to say that in St. Louis County, PAC TV is monitoring because they film the county board meetings and they film the city council meetings. And now that the school district is filming all meetings, including the business and committee meetings, or all the committee meetings, that's always on public TV, so I don't have to do it anymore. I did it for 8.25 years. But they had no records of any of their committee meetings whatsoever. But I was there and I was putting it on PAC TV. So now they're doing that here in this area, which is probably maybe one of the more open counties, cities in our nation. So I would say to the public, get involved. That's how it started with me. I went there to use a township hall and I saw some very unethical things happening, and I ended up on the board of the township, and I ended up now in soil and water. And I think anybody can do it, but you have to be dedicated. You need a group of citizens. If you can't be there all the time, you need a group of citizens that are willing to go to these meetings and listen and find out what's happening and record them if you need to record them. So,
very good points, Marcy. I would say that there is a lot of apathy out there, but one of the encouraging things that I tried to make available in this book is that the steps that are necessary are not that complicated. I mean, fundamentally, government shouldn't be so complicated that it's all brought up in red tape and that you had to follow these rules and regulations through days and days of hearings and all that. But it should be about serving the people, and it should be easy, and it should be easy for a civic-minded person to be able to speak their piece. We have several chapters in the later half of the book that talk about what questions are good to ask of your elected officials to keep them accountable, to make sure they're doing the business of the public good. Too many of these public agencies are basically filtering money to their nonprofit friends and other organizations instead of really focusing on what is the fundamental job. In the military, we had boundaries for everything we did. Every mission was guided by boundaries and standards to try to achieve great things. In politics, I very, very rarely heard somebody say, well, enough is enough, or let's trim down, or let's define what we do as a service agency. In military, we always did that. In politics, it was kind of, let's just keep adding on and on and on. And at some point, somebody's got to ask the question, when is enough enough?
I've asked that question. I asked it in the township. So I know what you're saying. And too often, I don't think that question is asked. But I mean, if the public isn't there, who's going to ask the question? Mm-hmm. Because you've got the political hacks in power, and nobody is saying anything to them. So, okay, now that we've kind of put the responsibility onto the public, why don't you go over some of the finer points in your book of how you see, after you've given, Alan gives a lot of good statistical information that is helpful for you to understand what is happening. Now, I would like you to just kind of define that overall a little bit better for us, Alan.
Well, we'll start with the budget of our nation. We're one of the most prosperous nations in the world, yet we have a $20 trillion debt. To the average person, they don't really know what that means. Here's the way I explain it to my children and grandchildren. That's a $56,000 debt for every man, woman, and child in this country. We need to stop the bleeding. Different economists give different answers, but basically someone says between 20 and 24 trillion is the point of no return, where we will go under as a nation. So we have to stop giving all these handouts. When you look at the founding of this country, it truly was founded on the great principle of freedom and liberty and justice for all. And now it's turned into a social program for every problem that we have. And let's face it, we have a lot of problems. And so what do we do to stop that, where the entitlement mindset is stopped and reversed, so that we're basically doing the government's job fundamentally is really not much different than the military arena. Their job is to defend and protect the people of the jurisdiction that they represent. And unfortunately, that has really expanded beyond description, where there are so many other services and everybody has their hand out wanting more and more and more. So another statistic is that the average person is paying about is paying to about 17 different political organizations their taxes. That's a lot when you look at watershed districts, state, city, county, township, federal government, school board. There's a lot of different taxing authorities over the average person. And most people are tired of politicians. They're tired of the lies. They're tired of the lack of accountability. They're tired of politicians, frankly, talking like kindergartners. Some of the arguments we got into at Isanti County, I seriously thought I was back in grade school or first grade. We were arguing over the silliest things and not really doing what I thought we should do, of caring about what was best for the people we were elected to serve. And it's amazing how politicians really have thin skin in a lot of ways, and they just want to do what they want to do, and they'll play dirty to get their job done. And the one who loses out on so many of these discussions and arguments is the people that they are elected to serve. And I just want the people to know that, to get informed, to get educated on what is the role of your various government organizations, so that you know you do have a voice, so that if you have a county like Isanti County that does not allow public input, that you can bring your neighborhood down to the county hall and express that that's wrong and that you want to change it. Because it was hard for one commissioner to do that. But if the voice of the people says we want that, then the commissioners at some point will have to listen to arguments like that. Bottom line is, why is public business being done in private? It doesn't make sense. It's not helping anybody. It's really hurting the people of America.
It's not healthy for freedom. That's a fact. It's not at all healthy.
And for the younger people, when we talk about freedom, that's the word I used a lot in the military, but it really boils down to choices. If you want independence and freedom and choice to do the things you want to do, giving more authority to the government is not going to help you, because at some point those responsibilities will be taken away from you, that opportunity to be independent and have the choices that you want to have on a day-to-day basis.
Well, we have just a few more minutes, Alan, to kind of wrap this up. Why don't you read the chapters in your book, just the title of them, just to give an overview of what your book is all about, and then we can give a website address or whatever you have that maybe people can get in touch with you and get a copy of the book.
Sure. Our website is Major Duff, MAJORDUFF.com, and the title of the book is Fixing America's Shattered Politics, Practical Steps Concerned Citizens Can Take to Regain Our Lost Government. Chapter 1 is The Erosion of Our Political Foundation. Chapter 2, We the People Have Lost Our Government to the Political Elite. Chapter 3, Politicians Eager to Fix All of Your Problems. Chapter 4, How Much Government is Enough. Chapter 5, Deferring Responsibility via the Political Blame Game. Chapter 6, Entrenched System Stifles Genuine Public Service. Chapter 7, Has America Lost Its Culture of Self-Reliance? Chapter 8, Earning Money versus Easy Money versus Taking Money. Chapter 9, Nice Guys Finish Last. So that's kind of a summary of the problems. Then part 2 of the book is practical steps concerned citizens can take to regain our lost government. Chapter 10, winning our country back based on military principles. Chapter 11, taking action. Chapter 12, defining legitimate functions of our government. Chapter 13, demanding transparency and accountability. Chapter 14, improving our political dialogue. Chapter 15, bringing it on home. Chapter 16, bringing corporate best practices into the political system. Chapter 17, bringing military principles into the political system. Chapter 18, hit the road, Jack, a case for term limits. Chapter 19, no more Mr. Nice Guy. And chapter 20 is the conclusion. The book is 150 pages. My goal was to write this in very easy to read and understand and actionable points for people, for the frustrated citizens of this nation, to be able to understand and that they could have a voice in the future of a political discourse.
Well, that sounds like some ways to try and do something, and certainly I know there are many people out there, even like myself, could learn a lot from your book, and I really appreciate that you're taking the time to write this and putting it into terms that we can understand. I know that you will be available to speak at like Rotary clubs or any place that people could get a gathering of people together. And so, again, you want to say your website where they can get in touch with you, and then they will have that information.
Sure. MajorDuff.com.
Okay, and I thank you very much, Alan, for coming
you.
in today and
Thank you, Marcy.
speaking with us.
All right.